All right. I know I'm about a minute or so early, so if you're still wrapping something up, that's fine. But if you ran into any issues or have any questions, feel free to jump in at any point here and ask. And if it looks like we're in good shape, then we will move on to the next piece of the evening. Things generally work the way you wanted. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
Uh, I want to know, like, for the sprite, is it like when we save names, location, is it like we have to save many times or just uh you have a sprite one or sprite two, or if you add another costume, do you need to save every single time or just how can I show the different costume? Do you like add another one?
So you mean, do you need to save the project, or do you need to save
Like
the,
uh there's one can do statement is like uh let me see, create set name, location, size, direction,
yep.
and the location. How do you set location? I forgot.
Well, you can either do it by the numbers, so you can just type in a number, or you can
Mhm.
just drag the sprite in that preview window, the top right-hand corner window. If you click on a sprite and just drag it somewhere and drop it, it'll then change the numbers to reflect where that is.
I know. Yeah, it has like either like zero or like to like 100 something.
Yeah,
Oh, that's a location.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
the X is from left to right and the Y is top to bottom.
okay,
Um,
but you don't have to save the name every like a single time, right? You
no.
just need to save. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's I
Yep.
think I'm confused. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
No problem.
Yeah,
All right. So let me well, first of all, let me get my sharing going here. So we're back looking at the right thing. Yes, this is it. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. All right. So if this was all that this program can do, obviously it wouldn't be much of a program, because so far all we've done is draw pictures. And there's thousands of programs out there that can draw pictures, and many of them can draw pictures better than this one can. So the real importance of this program is the programming, is getting these things to now do things, to be interactive, so that a user can engage with the items and get them to do things and get responses and get, all sorts of different things to happen. So that is where the coding comes in. And that's really what we're going to focus on now from here on out, is the coding side of things. So once you've got a sprite created and it's got some costumes and you like the way that it looks and so on, the next step then is to start telling it to do things. So what I've done now, I'm in my blue dog sprite and I've gone to the code tab. So now my window here is all about the programming for that sprite. And what we're going to start by looking at, because we've been focused on what these sprites look like, is we're going to look at the purple category, which is the looks category. And we're going to just kind of run through most of these to see what they do. The good news is, once you kind of have a basic concept of how these blocks work, you can probably on your own figure out just about how all of the rest of the blocks work. Scratch tried as much as possible to make these blocks use normal language. So it's not programming language that you have to learn some special vocabulary. They try to make the blocks just say the thing that you want the sprite to do. So to start with, I'm going to start with the two most basic ones, which are the show and hide. And I apologize. Well, here, I can zoom in a little this way. Um, To add these blocks to my program, I literally just dragged them from the list out into the window and dropped them. If you ever need a block to go away, just drag it back over into the list and it will disappear. So you can't like click on it and hit delete. You have to actually sort of drag it out of the way. So show and hide, I'll give you a wild guess about what these two blocks do. They will make that sprite appear and disappear. The way to run the program is to click on the block here. So if I want to run the hide block, I'm just going to click on it with my mouse. And over here, the blue dog disappears. In fact, let me do something here. I want to go back to, I'm just going to go back to a blank backdrop just so that you can actually see the dog. So I clicked hide, the dog disappeared from my preview. If I click show, boom, the dog is back. So it's exactly the same thing as when I clicked on the show and hide for the sprite, but this is now code. So I can change the hide and the show for the sprite as part of the program. So if I could get it to work triggered by something, the dog could appear and disappear like magic. So those two, show and hide, pretty self-explanatory. The next one, since we were dealing with costumes, is there are a series of blocks that have to do with changing the costume of the sprite. The two main ones say, one says switch costume to, and then there's a pull down menu. And then there's another one that just says next costume. Again, plain vocabulary here. Switch costume to blah, blah, blah means that when I click on that, it will switch the costume to whatever costume is in the box. If I pull down the menu, it will give me a list of the 3 costumes that are available for the dog. So if I wanted to go to the B costume, I would change that to B. Now when I click on this, the dog switches to the B costume. If I wanted to go to the C, I would change this to C, click on it. Now the dog goes to the C costume. All right, so I could create a bunch of these. Yep, I don't want them to click together, and set them to different ones. And then depending on which one I click on, the dog would change to that particular costume. All right. The other one, which just says next costume, is literally what it says. It just goes to whatever the next costume is in the order of costumes for that sprite. So if you don't want to create a bunch of these blocks and you just want it to go to the next, go to the next, go to the next, go to the next, you can just use next costume. And then every time I click on it, it goes to the next one. When it runs to the end of the list, it loops back to the beginning and starts all over again. So especially for little animation loops, that's an easy way to do it, because with one block, it just goes to the next and the next. And you don't have to worry about going to a specific costume. If you want to get to a specific costume and kind of jump through the costumes that a sprite has, then you would use the other command, the switch to. All right, so those two, and then there's two that also go with the backdrops, and they're the exact same thing. So if I click on this, it brings my water and rocks background in. I could go to the first backdrop, and then it also has next and previous and random. So you can actually get it to go through in different orders that way. And then there's also a next backdrop one, which will, like it said, just go to the next one through the list. So that kind of just at a basic level gets the look of your sprite to change. We also talked about the size of your sprite. That was another thing that we set in the original window. Well, there are also a couple of these. I'm going to move these out of the way. There's a couple here that have to do with changing the size of the sprite. One of them changes it by a certain amount each time you click on it. So if you just want something to gradually get bigger and bigger and bigger, you can just have it add 10 every time, add 5 every time. So if I keep clicking on this, the dog gets bigger by 10% each click. If I wanted to get smaller, I turn it into a negative number. And then each time I click it, it gets smaller and smaller. So that's that one. And then the other one is just go to a particular size. So if I wanted to just jump immediately to 200%, I just type in 200. And then when I click on it, it goes to 200%. And then every time I click on it, it stays the same because that's an actual number that it's going to. Another thing that you can do with sprites, which interactively is kind of a nice thing to have, is you can make your sprites talk. I don't mean out loud, but text bubbles. And they give you say and they give you think. And the only difference is that say puts it into a speech bubble and think puts it into kind of a thought bubble. So just graphically, they're a little different. So if I'm going to make my dog a little smaller here, if I click on this, it'll say hello. And he says hello for 2 seconds and then it goes away. Or if I just do the say hello, then the dog says hello and it'll just stay that way until I tell it to say something else.
Doctor, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
For the text box, is it dependent on the sprite's center point for where it populates?
Yeah, you don't have any control over where the speech shows up.
It's just going to go somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it'll connect it to the sprite, but if your sprite's over on the right side of the screen, the text will show up to the left of it.
Okay.
So it'll put it in the visual area, but you don't have any manual control over where that shows up. So yeah, that is one limitation with the say and the think. And with the think, it just gives little like dots out to the speech bubble instead of a speech thing. So they're essentially the same thing, just visually they look a little different. And you obviously can change what it says. And with the ones that have the timing, you can also obviously adjust how long it will stay there for. You just click in the ovals. It changes what it does, changes how long. And you will notice that when the script is running, a yellow outline appears around that script, so you kind of know what is actually active at any given time. That can be a good troubleshooting tool if you're trying to figure out why something's not working. So you've got say and you've got think. The final ones that I'm going to show you in this category have to do with layers. So to demonstrate this, first of all, I'm going to add another sprite. I'm going to use the surprise. I'm going to let it surprise me. Oh, look at that. I got a red glove. So if you have multiple sprites, even though we're in a two-dimensional work area, they are actually in layers. They can be on top of each other. So sometimes you need control over which one is in front of the other. So the last ones that I'm going to show you here in this category have to do, oh, sorry, I skipped something. Oh, I'll show this one, I'll go back. There are a couple that have to do, oh, I'll go back to the dog, that have to do with the layering. And these are, one of them just is about going to a specific layer, front or back. So that'll move it either all the way on top of everything else or all the way behind everything else. Or the other one gives you some options in terms of just moving through the layers, either going forward or backward one layer at a time. So if you have multiple things all stacked on top of each other, you can move them through the layers, you know, kind of move it through the stack one at a time. So if you run into issues in a program where something's getting hidden by something else because it's moved across the screen, you can always move that thing to the top layer so that it's the thing that everybody sees, or vice versa, you could move it to a back layer if you want it to be behind other things. So that also affects the looks. You can also do that layering back in when you're setting the, oh, actually, they don't give it to you there. Never mind. I thought you could set the layer when you did the sprite to start with, but they don't actually have the layers there. So never mind on that. All right. There was one other thing that I forgot to show, and that has to do with what they call graphics effects. And what these are they're just a series of ways that they have built into the program that let you change the look of a sprite in a couple of specific ways. So the effects you have available are color. And what that will do is recolor the sprite to a specific color scheme. There's a bunch of graphics one. Fish eye kind of distorts the sprite. Whirl distorts the sprite by kind of putting a swirly effect on it. Pixelate turns it into kind of that low resolution look. Mosaic, I can't remember what Mosaic does, but and then the last two, brightness and ghost, are probably actually the most useful ones. Brightness will lighten up an image, kind of give it a brighter look. It's coloring, it'll brighten up the color. And ghost is transparency. So if you want a sprite to gradually fade out and disappear, you would use the ghost effect, because what that'll do is gradually make it more and more transparent. So the way these work is you pick what effect you want to use. I'm going to use the ghost effect. And this one will change it by a certain amount. And again, a negative number will make it go lower. So I can make the dog gradually fade out by changing the ghost effect by -10. It's not really doing what I wanted it to, but you can also just set. So if I set the ghost, oh, that's what it is. That's right. Ghost effect, the higher the number goes, the more transparent it gets. So I actually wanted to, so now, yeah, there it goes. So it's fading away by 10. If I do -10, then it's actually going to get more solid. I can also set the ghost effect to a particular thing. So if I set the ghost effect to 100, the dog will completely disappear. It'll fade out to transparent. And I can bring it back. And then you can also do the same thing for the other effects as well, and kind of bring those in and out. And then if you just want to cancel a graphic effect, you can just clear it. And that way, so like if I've set the ghost effect and then I clear it, then it just sets it back as if the graphic effect isn't there. So those are just some different ways that you can change the look of a sprite without having to completely redraw it from scratch, as it were. All right, so those are all of the programming blocks that I'm going to show you in this category for now. There are a couple of other things in that category, these oval shaped ones. We will get to those down the road, so you don't have to worry about those. But again, what I like about this platform is they use plain language. They just put it in English, and in most cases, the block just does exactly what the block says. And when you click on the block will do whatever it is you tell it to do. Now, what I haven't talked about, well, actually, let me combine that with the next thing. So far, all of these things, in order for me to make it work, I had to come in here and actually click on the block and make the block do the thing that I wanted it to do. A user, though, is not going to come into your program and know to click on these blocks to get things to happen. You want them to just be able to trigger events and have them happen through ways that they can actually control. So in Scratch, there are 3 main events that you can trigger things through. One of them is the green flag. You'll see the green flag everywhere. That is their symbol to start the program. So you can have things happen whenever somebody clicks the green flag. So that's one way to trigger. Another way to trigger is through the keyboard. So you can set it up where if the user pushes a key on their keyboard, that causes something to happen. The third main way is that they actually click on the sprite itself, right? These are interactive programs. In a lot of games, you want to click on something and have it do something. You have a dice on the screen, you want to click on the dice, and when you click on the dice roll. or you click on something and it moves, or it changes its look, or whatever. So those three things are called events. So when a user pushes a key, when they click the green flag, when they click on the sprite, that generates an event. And what I want to do is connect that event to one of these things, one of these blocks. So in my categories, if I go down to to events, the yellow category, there's going to be a bunch here. And to start with, for example, this one says when the green flag is clicked. And that's it. It's an incomplete sentence because that's all it does, when the green flag is clicked. So if I pull this in here and click on the green flag, if you look carefully, you'll see the yellow outline around the green flag. Yeah, it goes by so quickly you probably don't even see it. I can just barely see it. So I clicked on the green flag and that made this block active. But right now that block's not connected to anything. So what I do is I bring it over, and you'll notice when it gets close to another block, it wants to click into that block. The shapes click together, boom. So I didn't even have to get it right in place. If I dragged them close and let go, they snap together. So these two now have become a program that has two commands. In English, when the green flag is clicked, change the ghost effect by -10, right? So let me set the ghost effect to 100, so the dog's gone. Now, every time I click the green flag, set the ghost, change ghost effect by 10. Oh, by -10, yeah. It changes the effect. So I didn't have to come into my program and do that. It just did it because the user clicked on the green flag. So that's one event. Another event is the keyboard. So the next one says when the space key is pressed, that's its default. But I can pull down that menu and you've got the 4 arrow keys, the space bar, any. So you can have it set up where they just have to push any key and something happens. And then it's got the full alphabet and the numbers. So you can't use the weird keys, you can't use the control keys and things like that, but all of the basic keys will work. So I could say when the space key is pressed, let me do this. I'm going to use a different block. So when the space key is pressed, it's going to set the ghost effect to 100. So that should make the dog disappear. Yep, I pressed the space key, it disappeared. And let me set a different one where when the, pull it over here. Sorry, I'm zoomed in, so things are kind of moving around here. When I'll set a different key. When the up arrow is pressed, then it's going to clear the graphic effect. So in theory, if I push the up arrow, the dog appears. When I push the space bar, the dog disappears. So my user is now controlling the dog with their keyboard by pushing keys. All right, so that's another way to control events. And then the third way, as I said, was by clicking on the sprite itself. And that one is just called when this sprite clicked. And I'll connect our say block to that one. So now when the sprite is clicked, Spot should say for 5 seconds, I am Spot. Oh, I can't see the sprite right now because he's hidden. So first I have to show him, which was the up arrow. And now when I click on Spot, that executes I am Spot. And I'll say it for 5 seconds and go away. So what I've now done is taken all of these purple commands and I've now built little tiny 2 instruction programs where the program is triggered by some event that the user can do, clicking on a sprite, pushing a key, clicking on the green flag. and that when the user does that, then the thing that I've connected that event to will happen. And I could connect a bunch of different things together to make that, it could trigger a whole series of events all in a row. All right. The final little thing, and then I'll give us a little bit of time to work. I'm still going to get us out of here by 7 tonight, I promise. The last thing, though, that I want to talk about is messages. So sometimes it's not just the sprite you're working on that you want to have something happen, but you want to have a bunch of different sprites do something based off of one interaction. So that is called messaging. So you can have sprites talk to each other by broadcasting messages and by receiving messages. So the three main blocks are when I receive message, and there's a pull down menu, broadcast a message, and broadcast a message and wait. So what the broadcast message does, the message isn't actually text or anything. It's just a signal. It says message number 1 has been sent. So, and you can create a new message. You can create as many different messages as you want so they can trigger different things. But let's say, for sake of argument here, with my 2 sprites, that I want the red goalie glove to change its costume when I click on the blue dog, right? So I want to trigger something in the red glove by clicking on the blue dog. So in the blue dog, what I would say is when this sprite is clicked, so when I click on the blue dog, it's going to broadcast message 1, right? Then I'm going to go to my glove and I'm going to say when I receive message 1, so the dog is sending message 1. Now I'm telling the glove, when I hear that message, then I'm going to do something. And let me, let's see, what can I pick here? Then I'm going to have it say something. It'll just say hello for 2 seconds. All right. So to review, the dog, when it's clicked, is going to send the message out. The glove, when it receives that message, is going to say hello. All right, so let's see if it works. So I'm going to click on the dog here, and the glove should be what talks. Oh, dog's going to talk too because it still has a script in there. Let me make that a little bigger here. So again, I'll click on the dog. The reason the dog is saying something is because we still have the script in there that says when I click on the dog should say something. But the glove is also going to talk, and the glove says hello. And that was through the message. So that's the way to get sprites to talk to each other to trigger things happening. So the user can trigger things, but then you can also have sprites trigger things by broadcasting messages and having other sprites receive those messages. So that's the other piece of this puzzle. The one that said broadcast and wait, where did that go? Here we go. If this was in a whole bunch of scripts all clicked together, it would broadcast the message and then it would wait for whatever other scripts run because of that message to finish before it would continue on. That's kind of a rare case scenario. So I wouldn't worry too much about that one right now, but that's why there's 2 versions of the broadcast message. Generally speaking, you just want it to broadcast the message and then continue on with its script. All right. So that gives us, now we know how to make the sprites. We now know how to tell the sprites to do things through the purple scripts, how to change their look. And you can trigger those manually by just clicking on them. But we also now know through events how to get a user to be able to trigger those things by either clicking on the sprite, clicking on the green flag, or pressing a button on the keyboard. All right. So let's do this because, as I said, I'm definitely going to get you out of here before 7, but I also want to give you a chance to just take a little closer look at this while I'm here and while you can ask questions. So let's take 10 minutes. So around little after 6:40, we'll come back together, debrief. I will talk about the homework for this week, and we'll be out of here by hopefully 6:50 or so. And what I will do this time, I will stay here in the room and I'll stay active. So if you're working and you run into a problem or you have a question, you don't have to wait till 6:40 to ask it. You can just jump right back in here and ask me your question. That way also, I think we can speed things up a little bit. All right. So plan on having about 10 minutes to look at these first script blocks, the looks and the events, and ask me any questions you have, and then we will continue on at about 6:42 or so. All right? Off on your way. Good luck.